Boom. We are alive, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us today. This is TODR came out. Ooh, it has been a little hot minute. Lots has taken place. It took almost like a 2-week vacation there. It felt real good. I'm happy to be back. And in that time, so much has happened. I actually don't even know where to start. So we're going to start with the fun stuff. This is actually the most recent. Before I do that, I just want to make sure we're all live streaming. Everyone give us a thumbs up. No, you see the content. Just make sure everything works. It's been a while. I got to check YouTube. Okay, everything appears to be working. Nice. All thumbs up. Awesome. Thank you, Bear Family. I appreciate that. Okay, so what we're going to do today is we're going to start by looking at the crypto sector and go from there. And actually, uniquely enough, we're going to start with Ethereum for fun. And there's a reason for that. Now, we're always learning as things grow. And here's Ethereum. And actually what we're going to do, we're going to go back to our macro chart. We drew this up back at the beginning of 2020. We have not changed the drawing since. It was this really big macro chart. And what we were following down here in this kind of indiscriminately, well, it looks poorly drawn, but if you get closer, this beautiful trading range that had started to form back in 2020. This is the reason why we got so bullish. There are certain times when technical charts, it's a heck of a lot easier to find a bottom, usually long-term accumulation. There's no hype involved. Nobody really cared about Ethereum between $100 to $300. And especially back here at the beginning of the pandemic. So this little spring here was the beginning of the pandemic. But what I wanted to do again was give the macro perspective of where we started and where we've landed. So we landed all the way back down to the top of the trading range. So the other unique thing here that we wanted to go over is that just like any trading range or any formation in life, it seems, you end up with some type of scale invariant function where depending on the size of the thing, it looks actually exactly the same. Could be almost microscopic or macroscopic. So this kind of macro view is fun for this reason. So we actually had the bottom of the spring down here, but this was the top of the trading range. So there's two trading ranges that were taking place. There's one that took place near the bottom, which was the noticeable one. And there's this much larger trading range, which took Ethereum up to $1,500 before back down to 80. From that, we've now accumulated both back at the trading range and the lowest regression line, which is that red line we had drawn back in August of 2020. So this bottom red line hasn't changed at all. We've come right down to that, and now we see that there's a building of support near the previous all-time high and where we are today. So is that the end of the downside for Ethereum or Bitcoin or the rest of the sector? Well, not going to say yes to that. There's always room and reason to believe we could go lower. What I like about the crypto sector is that it's built its own life separate to that of the S&P 500 and the majority of other risk on tech assets over the last bunch of years. What I think's most interesting is that even though these are all risk on assets, Ethereum and Bitcoin, Avalanche, all of these kind of have grown up in their own field of open, decentralized venture capital. So very early on, you as a community member have been able to participate with the growth of a product. Actually, Other Side and the Bored Ape Yacht Club has just been melting my brain lately with their live demos. But this ability to participate in early stage growth is not a function of the older web format. Normally, the older web format, you get to play with what they build after it's been beta tested and sent through the ringer. Prior to you, even though they're building while you're there, you don't really get to participate in its upside growth. So you were never rewarded with Facebook stock for being there. But this is not true with Web3. We see the opposite of this. We see rewards being given very early on just for participating. I think that this is one of the most important functions because it means the community is more immediately aligned with any prosperity that comes from the network growth of any said network, right? So this is the argument I make of, okay, well, one of the things that's very exciting about as we get lower to the bottom, whether this is the exact bottom, which is in my thesis, it was, right? If Bitcoin dropped down to around 20,000, and then we would stay there and then hopefully turn around and shoot back up for the 3 peaks in a domed house. And we'll continue to go over that, but there's just so much data in the last, I guess the last few weeks while I've been away, that I think is extraordinarily helpful. The macro story is what we're going to get to next, which is also a lot of fun and also inspiring. Yeah, we'll go with the word inspiring. So Ethereum has actually performed really well here, and it's led the market. In the previous or in the bull market of 2020 as well, Ethereum actually led Bitcoin out of its trading range. When we left the first box of the trading range for Ethereum, Bitcoin was actually quite a bit behind it, not in percentage growth, but actually in the time before it started to leave that range, right? So if we look at Bitcoin, let's go back to our macro story for Bitcoin. This is another, this is the other one we've had drawn up here for about since 2020, or where is it? Is it this one? One of these has the full frame chart on it. It's been a while since we looked at these. Maybe it's the first one. There it is. Okay. So here is the original macro drawing from Bitcoin in August of 2020. This chart has not changed, and we've fallen back down to the top of the trading range and below the previous regression line. So actually Bitcoin is showing weaker in its format here. So first off, what I want to do right now is make some very important assertions. As we get closer to the bottom of a market anytime, we're going to find out who the leaders are. That's just the fun nature of the market, because when you can show strength in crisis or strength in weakness, it's even about character in general, like people that can remain calm in very stressful situations. That's what you're looking for. And there are a few other assets actually in this bucket that have performed very well. So I'm going to very quickly just take a look at FTT. So FTT, for those of you who don't know, that this is the FTX token. So this is an exchange token, very similar to, I guess, BNB. It's got a built-in burn function. And now you've got Sam, SBF basically has bought all of the other companies that have gone bankrupt. So you've got a very powerful operator in here. And FTX or FTT here has actually performed very well. It stayed within its box or within its trading range the entire time. Whereas if we look at Ethereum, both of them fell out of the box. It's fallen below the box, which is not unusual. We do see springs that fall below the box frequently, and so did Bitcoin. Bitcoin has fallen well below the box here, and again, what could be just a spring, and that's still my assertion. Until I'm proven wrong, I'm going to stand by the thesis of a three peaks in a domed house, and there's a reason for that. So I'm kind of making a broad spectrum analysis here, but this is Avalanche, and we see this in Solana as well, but Avalanche is basically a perfect representation of the three peaks in the domed house. And what's fun about the market cycles was, first off, I'm clearly better at finding bottoms than we are tops. Tops have never been I've never really been great at tops. I take my profits, I set up myself for the next few years, but I'm not really good at like cashing all in or all out. That's never been my style. Tops are very distracting and deceiving, but these bottom markers are way easier to figure out. That usually has to do with the market die-off. We are still in the early days of technology like Avalanche, Ethereum, Solana. Like this has so much room for up still, and we don't know who the winners are, right? So in this layer one conversation between Ethereum and Avalanche and Solana, they're all appearing very strong right now. Look, so here we're going to use, first off, the Avalanche has now returned to 0.10, which is where you'd look for three peaks, which we have here, and then the domed house. Again, like a footprint in the wild, they're always subtly different. And a breakout above the top of this trading range. Now we had fallen, here we go. We've been following down this trend line and we've broken above that. So first hint of bullish sentiment within this trading range. Now, does that mean we're going to begin a bull market? No, not necessarily, but it does mean we're likely going to get a relief rally somewhere up within probably the $50 to $60 range. Now, not a guarantee. But as we keep going, as we keep looking, we keep seeing the same. Let's look at a closer view. Yeah, here we go. Bit of a closer view with Ethereum. Notice the trading range here, horizontal trading range that has taken place, and now closing very, very strongly above, right? So if Ethereum does this and breaks out, it's going to continue upwards of probably around $2,000 here. And then this could be a bottom where you see a right-hand shoulder take place here. This could very easily be a bottom for Ethereum. This technology will change the way everything works, right? You know, people still don't recognize that it's already changed the way everything works. It takes more of a time, like perception of something, and then people actually using it takes a lot longer to come to fruition than the thing that's actually happened, if that makes sense. So what Ethereum, what Avalanche, what Bitcoin, what all these will do to our future as we know it huge. It's huge. It'll change a lot of the kind of ordinary functions of things. What that looks like, I've still been baffled. Been here for years, and every time I show up, I'm like, damn, this shit is so cool. Like, it keeps doing more stuff that I would have never imagined. So that part to me is exciting, that we still don't know the potential. Everyone's like, oh, well, why would you want to add Bitcoin or blockchain to this stuff? It's like, you guys don't know what it can do yet. That's the crazy part, is we haven't yet fully breached into the functional aspect of what happens when we decentralize the nature of governance, power, money, any type of structure. If we can decentralize any, I guess, collusion of power back amongst the people, that net benefit of people being rewarded for participating in something like a Facebook or a Netflix or a Twitter, you got jack shit back. Even a micro repayment from that in its early days would have been worth so fucking much to the average participant. And companies normally operate like that. Like, if you go work at Facebook or Netflix or Lululemon early on, they give you stock options. But the reason that was never in place for just people using it is because A, it wasn't easy to distribute. It's not easy to have fractional, multiple decimal points of ownership within things, or keep track of it, especially at a global function. So what's already taken place, the nature of this technology has changed so much what will happen in the future. What we're trying to do is grasp each step of the way where these power points are coming out. And right now, the layer one sector is clearly stronger than Bitcoin, right? So now Bitcoin has moved above its box, but less so than Avalanche, less so than Ethereum, and even Solana right now is, actually Solana is about as equivalent to Bitcoin here. It's not much out of the it's not even out of the box yet, technically speaking. So both Ethereum and Avalanche here are Ethereum specifically leading the way. And I think these are where we'll get our strongest indicators, is down near the bottom of the market of what people are the most interested in. So hats off to Ethereum. Great move here. Is the bull market starting again? I've stood by this thesis for a while that what we were going to get was this really kind of sharp snapback out of this range and then continue upwards. Now, I could be wrong. One more step down and I'm like totally invalidated, because this is at the very, very bottom threshold of where I thought we would get to. I knew we would come down to 29,000. It's pretty simple. It's like, okay, 0.10. And we knew from the S&P 500 that we get this return back below the box quite frequently. So we were using this thesis here that we were at a very limited function of supply for Bitcoin. So as long as the demand stayed relatively high, which is not always the case, it's hard to say, printing money and loaning it out at very cheap interest rates obviously helps keep demand of anything high, apparently. We've learned here, the S&P 500 did slip below 20 to 25% below 0.10 before it turned up. So seeing a slip below the trading range here in Bitcoin wasn't outside of the realm of potential for the thesis, right? We're like, it could still slip below. It did that in the S&P 500 because people get scared. They sell at a reduced supply. We saw the liquidation of Three Arrows Capital. Well, I was Voyager, Celsius has gone bankrupt. These are some of the biggest companies, and those are very strong bottom signals. Those are max fear. Those guys got wrecked, basically, right? And these are, I think, also strong indicators. Look for bankruptcies. Unless people are going bankrupt, we're not near the bottom of the market yet. But hey, here we are. Like, people have gone bankrupt, people have gone insolvent. We're pretty damn close to the bottom. This is like, might as well call it the bottom, right? Because even if it's 20 to 30% in between, over time, I think that will just wash out. And I believe, again, very strongly that Bitcoin and the entire crypto sector has been kind of in its own sphere, that over the next year or two, it's going to completely separate from the traditional market because it didn't grow up from the same bailouts. No one, I guess the only bailout the crypto sector is getting is Sam Bankman-Fried at the moment. So there was a bit of a bailout, but only for companies that would be successful if they were bought, or if there was some value to the assets that were being bought by that company. So to kind of shorten this into one idea before we go over a bunch of stuff here, what I want to say is two things. Number one, being consistent with any investment is going to be the strongest point of return. It's not about investing at the exact right time. We've gone over tons of different data points that prove the consistency is the best way to allow for discretion to take place in an investment thesis, so that if I think something's hot shit, like for instance, actually let's do this. Let's take a look. Let's go to the fun part for now. Okay, so I've been having a great old time taking a look at Otherside. I think it's otherside.xyz. I'm going to use this. So I've been having a great old time watching what the Bored Ape Yacht Club community and Yuga Labs has put together. So every month that they keep producing and bringing new ideas to the table, I get more and more excited. But our thesis wants to then increase the holdings in the nature of the thing that we're witnessing, because it's doing well. Like, it's fantastic. So they have these pieces of land. They're like 3 Ethereum, like it's 6,000. We're going to launch another 100 to 200,000 pieces of property, trying to make an assertion on, these companies like Fortnite do $5 billion a year in revenue from in-game sales. And okay, well, that's all huge potential for a metaverse, and there's already functioning. They had 4,500 people playing with proximity voice chat. They already had some of their codas integrated. Okay, this thing's going to do well. But when the Bored Ape Yacht Club community first came out, if you would have told me that, I'd been like, no, I'm not going to bet. I'm not going to bet 40, 50, 100,000 more on something like this, because there's not enough data there for me to want to make that hypothesis, that assertion. But as time continues, these motherfuckers just keep delivering. So it increases the conviction necessary. So time and patience is such an important function of the investment, because it gives you the time to figure out how much cool stuff. So if you guys haven't yet, check out some of the other side. Oh yes, and Improbable too, I guess it would be the other way to look at the story. The Improbable guys that have built this kind of underlying technology of bringing all these people onto the platform that were, I guess, kind of playing all at the same time these digital metaverses with thousands of people. You've got characters, you can see the potential of shows taking place. This type of technology is going to do really well. I haven't seen anything like it, and I'm new to the gaming sector, so I'm playing Fortnite, I'm playing Elden Ring, I'm trying to figure out what the fuck's going on in games. I haven't played games in a decade. So time allows us to build conviction, even in things that we are totally unsure of or uneducated about. I don't know anything about games. I didn't even like games 2 years ago. I thought games were ridiculous, but here we are. So time allows us to build conviction. And because this sector has been running kind of in its own function separate from the market, aside from money printing, I think it's going to break away at one point. The stock market has a lot further that it can go down. Bitcoin's already been up and then down 80 to 90% multiple times, where during that time the S&P 500 has only really gone up, right? That's it. There's a lot more room for pain inside of these assets. Bitcoin's already had these violent fluctuations. Same with Ethereum. Although again, there is reason to believe Ethereum could go down to $300 to $400. It doesn't make a difference. You should be measuring that consistency and conviction through time. So whatever a good investment thesis looks like, it's like going to the gym. It means it needs to be done frequently for best results. So good to see everything's doing very well. And also, again, breaking outside of these secondary boxes. Here is let's go to the daily on Avalanche. This 3-peak and domed house that we're witnessing on Avalanche looks fucking perfect. This looks like a flawless technical setup. So there's a lot of reason to believe that there's strength in this market right now. And as we continue this, I think if we see a close above 21, we're going to see a continuation pattern in maybe much of this sector. Now, let's, before I go over just a bunch of, actually, let's just do this now. So let's Solana. We've got to take it a log here. So Solana, two awesome things here. Number one, we saw on the left hand side a Livermore widening megaphone pattern. We see the blow up, and we've seen a complete return down to basically the bottom and the end of this. So here's another very strong indicator. So for those of you that haven't seen these before, you go Jesse Livermore megaphone. This is a kind of a fun expanding wedge. Nice. Let's get my face out of the way. Or no, if I click on this, will that make it better? Yeah, okay, here it is. Okay, so this is the Livermore speculative chart, and this is what we're comparing it to. So on the left hand side, we had our 1 points of 1 through 7. And our massive blowout into points 9 and 10, which we saw here. Boom, boom, boom. And this massive degradation back through point 12, bang. And then this fall all the way to point 15, which is approximately equivalent to point 7, which is okay, which is what we have here. Great. Right down to point. This is the end of the market. This is basically the market bottom, right? Could you have a fluctuation of 20 to 30% a little bit lower? Yes. But this is, see, that's why this dotted line is kind of like vague here. We're in the bottom area on a bunch of styles of charting, whether it's the 3 peaks and the domed house. Now the Livermore kind of finalizing here back down near the bottom for Solana as well. I'm not a fan of FTM, so we're taking it off the list. I'm going to start narrowing some things down just more. In general, I want to look at just a broad spectrum of ideas that we had looked at the last year. Wu Trade is now consolidating within a box. It's hard to say where it is, just had so much volatility. Well, actually, we can skip some of these because these are more in our venture capital, but let's just look at the market from some of the leaders out there. Aave is all the way back down near its 2020 lows, okay? So this is another important thing to remember, is that we are basically back where we were in November of 2020. This is peak fear. Everyone's locked down. There's a virus headed our way. Like, this is one of the unique functions of these things having been around and been in a very risk-based space already. They can't go much lower. People can't get much more scared than they were back in October of 2020. And that's the bottom that we're hitting on some of these too. You could make probably an argument for some technicals here, like a falling wedge as well, something like this. Although it doesn't look too beautiful, you could make an argument for a falling wedge. Again, some type of bottom is taking place here. Wi-Fi, back near September 2020 as well. Uniswap, I thought that this was kind of nice. Now, Uniswap, sadly, is as amazing as it is, it just doesn't have some of the utility you would hope maybe from Uniswap within the token. But nonetheless, it looks like we're seeing an analog of a bottom. And look, this is November 2020. We are back at the lows of November 2020 for these assets. How much lower can it go than when it was at its peak fear in the middle of the pandemic, when everyone was still locked down and just thought everyone was going to die randomly? So what I think we're seeing is the bottom, effectively. Again, give or take like a gap. This is the bottom, which means we're about to see likely an automatic rally. So everyone's going to call it a pump and dump, but it's going to pump and then it's going to dump, because that's what a trading range does. It creates an automatic rally. So let's actually take a look at this in a few more sections. Let's skip over the venture portfolio and look at some of the broader stuff. Again, SRM, you can't see it. It's because I'm on a perpetual chart right here, but it's back down near the bottom. Algorand 2, look, we're basically back at the bottom of 2020. Oh, this is only 2021 though. Let's take a look at Link. Another strong. Okay, well, for Link here, we're significantly up still. Here's March of 2020. So here's the peak pandemic. Let's see, get a pointer. Here's the peak pandemic on the left-hand side of the chart, and here's where we are now. I mean, we're still up, but not by much. I mean, the peak, we're up 165% for Link off the pico bottom of a pandemic. So this is pretty incredible. I think that these are, again, strong signals that we are at or so near the bottom that it's basically irrelevant. And that, again, also, I think that these are going to separate very strongly from the traditional markets. Let's take a look at Fetch. This was another one of our strong plays from early 2020, back down in late of where we were of November 2020. Matic. Nice. Matic's showing some serious strength. See, this is likely the first automatic rally. So I'm gonna pin this as basically the selling climax, and what we're witnessing is the first automatic rally. So this is where people get it wrong. They call it a pump and dump, because you see the selling climax goes into an automatic rally and it comes down into a test to test this bottom one more time. Right. That's why being patient throughout trading ranges is super important. So it's not a pump and dump. It's a selling climax and an automatic rally. That would be my strong sentiment. So I think that we're going to get growth out of a bunch of this. Look, I mean, again, look at Matic, just from the bottom of the box to where we are. We're already up 60%. That's strength, right? This is a new automatic rally from our selling climax. This is likely the start of a new accumulation trading range, because these are breaking out of their smaller boxes right now. This is, again, to me, I think the sign of that was the selling climax, and this is our very first automatic rally. So let's take a look at that, what that looked like for Ethereum back in 2020, just as a kind of a side example. My dogs must have found a deer or something, or a boar that they outside. So here we are back in 2020, and here's Ethereum. Okay, so here's the trading range for Ethereum. Here is the primary support, and then the selling climax. So if we were to again look at something like Matic, this is likely primary support back here at $1.40, and then here's the selling climax and the first automatic rally. So I think what we're seeing here for Ethereum is the first step up from selling climax into the automatic rally. And this can do a number of things. Again, notice here with Ethereum, we went from $80 to $300, back down to $80 in less than 300 days. So from selling climax to automatic rally was 100 days, 200 days, and we went up 250%. And then we retraced all of that in less than 188 days. 188 days, and we retraced pretty much all of it. So within 100 days, and then within another 100 days, you have a pump and then what looks like a dump. But this is what I believe is the formation of a new trading range. So I think we're witnessing the first automatic rally that we've seen since these primary selling this primary support and the selling climaxes have taken place. So again, the only question is this the primary support and not the selling climax? And we see a selling climax that goes a little bit lower into these technical trades here. Again, with Avalanche, this wasn't too much lower we could go. We're basically back all the way to 0.10. Even if we had to come back down to 0.10, it's not that big of a deal. It's all within this range here. So I think it looks like a nice bottom, especially, again, concerning the idea that we're seeing what appears to be an automatic rally. So that's a bullish point, at least temporarily. But again, remember, it's temporary. From selling climax to automatic rally, we go up and then we come down. The only time I've seen it change is when we have these three peaks in domed houses where they basically just continue onwards and upwards. And maybe maybe Avalanche does that. Maybe Solana does that. I'm not sure. What's unique here is we're in such strange times. So to go to that strange time thought a little bit more, I wanted to start here. Here is a photo of a Buddhist monk throwing tear gas back at the Sri Lankan protesting police. I thought it was important to go over some of the macro things that are taking place and understand the context of why I believe crypto is so valuable. And when I say crypto, I mean Bitcoin as well. I think a lot of people are Bitcoin maximalists and totally misrepresent the importance of just decentralization. You can't just have only Bitcoin. That itself is not decentralized. Decentralization actually requires pretty much as many choices as you could have, and allow them to be interoperable. I think that's what decentralization looks like. Just one is not the answer. Many is actually the answer. That's, I believe, how the power of the people worked. It was for the many. Anyways, we'll get align this for a sec. So here's a monk with a gas mask throwing tear gas back at the government. The reason why I want to go over this is because this is what they say. This is a bunch of people breaking into the Sri Lankan presidential palace, and then I believe they said he resigned. Like, this was him resigning. So he resigned by being forced out by millions of people. Now, for those of you that don't know, Sri Lanka went on this kind of kick and said, hey, we're going to go organic everything, and then all of a sudden they destroyed farming all around Sri Lanka. So they crippled the economy by trying to go green. You can go organic farming, but you can't do it all at once. You have to start new farms. You have to wean off. They just went no more fertilizer, basically. It's one of the stupidest things they've ever seen. And they're trying to do that to the Dutch farmers right now. So we have protests in Panama, in Kazakhstan, in Albania. I think it was Albania. Sri Lanka, a lot of countries are going through turmoil right now. I'm sure Venezuela and Argentina are probably still on that list. And what's the other thing I wanted to go over here too was Bitcoin to Sri. Actually, do we have it in TradingView? I thought this was kind of a fun analysis. No, we don't have it here. It's going to have to Sri Lankan rupees. Yeah. So here's okay, so this let's see, something's up here. Let's go. Okay, so just as an example, looks pretty small right now. There we go. Okay, so this is the Sri Lankan rupee to the US dollar. It's gone up, it's lost about 100% of its purchasing power on like one day. So on that one day, Bitcoin effectively maintained a significantly higher value than the rupee itself. So Bitcoin becomes most valuable when things start to become the most unstable. This is one of the difficult aspects to understand, is trying to predict the future. One of the things I think that's so important about code as a centerpiece is that you don't have to rely on people. You kind of do, because you need people that can understand the code. Otherwise, if you don't understand the code, someone could directly lie to you, and what better would you know, because you don't know shit about code, and that's a problem. But there is a way to disintermediate the need for trust between parties by using code. And this is one of the kind of unique game functions right now. So this brings me to a larger, much broader perspective of the conversation, which is these are kind of the debt. This is a grouping of data. So we've got the government bond yield, 5-year CD spreads, interest rates on the GDP, government debt, and sovereign debt and vulnerabilities and ranking. So currently, right now, let's just go within the top 10 here. You have Bahrain, Ukraine, Argentina, Kenya, Egypt, Pakistan, Tunisia, Ghana, and El Salvador on the brink of financial collapse through debt, usually to the International Monetary Fund, which is just some fucking make-believe group of people who give out money for free. So first off, the whole thing is a sham. It's all a fucking giant Ponzi scheme, if you haven't realized it yet. The downside is that people don't recognize it. They're like, well, the US dollar is super strong because the government and the banks and the fucking guns, and no, none of that. Technically, it's all bullshit. That's how a Ponzi scheme works. Bernie Madoff got away with it pretty incredibly for a while. Lots of people do, in fact. Each one of these governments has for a long time. And if you look back in history, they've all failed for the same reason. They do the same thing. They overprint, they overextend, and they turn into corrupt criminals along the way. And that's how they end up continuing to afford for their corruption and criminal behaviors, through this control of the money printing press. Now, the United States has stayed strongly in the lead for the ability to print the printing press dollar, because everyone agreed to trade in dollars. But that's been starting to change as the APAC region, many Central American countries are starting to talk about trading in their own currencies, because they can't afford oil right now. And that's what happened, and why everyone ended up in the pool here, not just because they went trying to go all green, but because as they ran out of US dollar reserves, as the Federal Reserve increased interest rates, they could no longer service their debt, which means they could buy no more oil. So their economy came to a standstill. Can't afford oil in US dollars because there's no US dollars left. So what do? They started to trade potentially with Russia and India and China instead, because they'll accept something else. So we're in a very unique, turbulent times right now on the macro perspective. But who comes out the leader? Is it all of these failing currencies and failing trust in governments? I fucking hope not. The idea here is that a lot of this technology can lead to an on-ramp in the times of crisis when people need it most. And that's what attracted me about Bitcoin in its early days. When the Sapritic collapse happened, I was like, wait a second, they can just take your money out of your bank. So understanding that you've got countries down the list here, and I see Costa Rica here on the list at number 16 with a 5.2% interest rate over its GDP. That's crazy. So that means, just as to quickly go over here, El Salvador's government debt to GDP is 82.6%. Even Mexico at 58. Like, this is crazy. Nigeria at 37. That's actually good job, Nigeria. You guys must have a bunch of resources or something. I don't know about. I'm sure lots of people do, but again, to see these high numbers, like your Bahrain at 116% government debt over GDP, your government is not a good investment at this point. Any money you're giving them for taxes or fucking anything is a bad spend. And this is what we see. Governments become a horrible return on investment. There becomes no return. The money collapses. The corruption it basically starts to increase, and you have an explosion. And we have this kind of unique colliding macro series of events where they're all kind of starting to explode together, because a lot of them can't service that US dollar debt as it increases 2%, because they were already at the fucking breaking point. Like pretty much everything up to 25 here is at the breaking point-ish, right? You know, you've got a few, again, that could sneak out of the way, like Nigeria, because they got a bunch of resources. Mexico's got a bunch of resources too. Even, you know, if you got a few other in there, Turkey, that could swing out resources, you know, that could stay afloat. But even here, Costa Rica, I've been looking at this, I'm like, you know, I always saw people drive like really nice cars. I'm like, these people can't afford these cars. And I look at the interest of GDP, and this is just government debt. It's a 5.2%. None of these people can afford this stuff. It's like way beyond, you know, anything above 3 here. The country is spending way beyond its fiscal potential here. So we're in some pretty dire times. The other thing I wanted to point out was another kind of reversal on trends here was, here's the Canadian Bank of Canada. They've done the same thing as United States over the last 6 months now, which is keep raising interest rates, which again only puts pressure on other countries that need to close in that denominated debt. So here it's not US dollars, it's Canadian. But just from an internal structure, this means now that people who had just mortgaged houses in the United States or Canada, they can maybe no longer service the payments on that house. So now they're about to lose their house. If they keep increasing interest rates, more people are going to lose their houses as the housing market collapses. So you're seeing this weird, I'm going to use conflagration, even though I think conflagration is technically for fire. And it feels, anyways, you have this conflagration of events taking place that really stimulates some of the strongest macro headwinds we've ever seen. So because Bitcoin was a crisis asset, because all of this, like even Axie Infinity to me became this kind of crisis asset investment. We look for things that can withstand the crisis so that we know when crisis hits, they're actually bear market proof, right? So even though the Bank of Canada is going to do all this crazy shit, I think that we're going to see a massive disconnect from the sector that we are in, the crypto sector, and the rest of the world that's kind of built up this massive debt bubble around housing, around stocks, around a bunch of companies that probably shouldn't even exist. They're there just for bureaucracy's sake, right? There's basically no need for these governments to exist anymore in many of the countries, because they've done such a bad job. They're like, if they were a company in any other way, they would have gone out of business, right? So I suspect that we will continue to see this, and also hats off to them. I almost always see Klaus Schwab trending, or the World Economic Forum. So that's good to see that more people are waking up to just bad policy around you'll own nothing and be happy. These are communist lines, okay? So people should be very aware of how dangerous some of that stuff is. Don't worry, we're doing this for your health, or we're doing this for your benefit. We're gonna just lock you up and throw you away, because if you create too much climate change, then you're gonna destroy the planet. You wouldn't live life anyway. So if we just tell you can't drive anywhere, and this is where a lot of this looks like this is heading. They're trying to sign people up for we're giving away gas subsidies in Panama, but you have to sign up for this new platform that registers you and your vehicle. Or food subsidies, you have to have 3 vaccinations to get your food subsidy card. So this isn't an outright attack. I don't want to get too conspiracy hypothetical here, but it's always falling in this one direction, which is against the power of the people. And one of the most unique aspects around decentralized technology is its whole aim is to put the power back in the hands of the people in the community that uses the technology. And I can't explain how serendipitously beautiful that this space could be, and why I still show up to enjoy, I guess, its ever-increasing intricacies, the ridiculousness that is the crypto sector. So there's lots of strength. Again, seeing Link basically back near its 2020 bottom, I think is a good thing. It means we're not too far away. So there's lots more room for upside, depending. But remember, consistency, patience, it all does a much better job through time anyway, so no need to take drastic approaches. But good, again, 22% up on Matic today, 13% up on Near. You got 14% up on Avalanche, 10% on Ethereum. there's energy, and I think that this is the automatic rally of a new trading range. So that'll be kind of fun. There's a bunch of other stuff I wanted to talk about today, but I just wanted to take a look at some of your guys' thoughts and questions before we go too far. Make sure everything's going smoothly. Busy Mountain says the Russian ruble has gone gold backed. Yes, Russia's economy has done very well. Again, this is another one of those things where the problem always falls in the same direction, where I go, wait a second. See, if it was just stupidity, people make stupid choices that go in the right direction sometimes, but this is stupid always in the wrong direction. And that's more likely not to be stupid, and it's likely intentional. If it was stupid makes all sorts of decisions. It doesn't just always make the same wrong decisions, right? So if you have stupid always in the same direction, it's actually usually called criminal intent. Okay, let's take a look at a few more thoughts here. Nigeria has a lot of crude oil, one of the main important resources. Yes, well, yes. So that chart of Nigeria's function of resources probably makes sense. Blockchain Hustle says, I like your calm combination with a view on the hybrid. Thank you. I just have fun sharing this. I've always I started Arcane Bear because I love having conversations with really intelligent people, and this is formed, specifically to grow around what's most profitable for everyone, or what brings everyone the most value, and that's been one of our lines of our mission statement to begin with. So as we started to focus, the interest in talking to astrophysicists around the movement of the planet and the sun, or the movements of the planets around the sun, which we did do back in 2017. We stopped doing because even though I love those value conversations, nobody's making money off that unless there's like some weird astrophysicist of you out there who build a rocket or some anti-gravity device because you figured some shit out about this. I have no idea, but that's much less likely. Investing in video games, on the other motherfucking hand, that's a very likely high chance of success right now. So I'm very excited about what's been happening in the Web3 sector. And again, I think it can outpace the government failures in the time of need. And I'm hoping that people adopt for that kind of reason. Let's see. Venezuela is also selling oil to rubles. That's very possible. Venezuela is definitely not collaborating with the United States. I think actually I even saw Nicaragua was going to start housing Russian soldiers. Leo Lady Stewart says, in Australia, the people have Stockholm syndrome towards the governments. If the police say jump, they say how high. Yes, I've been fascinated by the ASH experiments. For those of you that don't know, AS experiments, these were a group of experiments that were done, the ASH conformity experiments. So what they did was take a group of people and let's say 8 people, and you would be the one test subject, but the other 7 people were all in on this, and they would show you a line that say, hey, which line is this? Which line is the same length? Is X the same as A, B, or C? And everyone in the line, or everyone in that group would say, geez, I couldn't get a decent view. There we go. So they'd be like, okay, well here's the line on Exhibit 1. Which line is similar? And everyone in the line would go before you would say C is the same as Exhibit 1, and everyone would go, as they would go down that line, would say C, and then it would get to you, and you could clearly see that A was actually the right answer, but you would say C just because 7 people before you did. And this happened around 75% of the time. 75% of the people just conformed to the wrong answer, even though 36% of them knew when asked afterwards that this was clearly the wrong answer. So we have 75% of the people willing to follow jumping off a cliff simply because the 3 to 4 people in front of them did that. That's a fucking horrible function inside of the human experience, yet it's provable. So the ASH experiments are a very interesting kind of thought process on what happens when you when you put humans into a conformity experience. Anyways, I thought that one was kind of fun. Let's take a look at a few more thoughts. Going with food is healthy for you. Yeah, fasting is good. Pixel Waffle says some K Bitcoin out of the question now and then. Look, sure, we could go to 10 grand. Why not? there's no, on the downside, we're not trying to measure getting the bottom. That never works. At least in our focus is not as traders. It's in investment consistency over time, and no leverage. Don't ever use leverage unless you can constantly shovel in more money from other people. Then go ahead, I guess. But yes, other than that, yes, I would be, but I would be very cautious because of those macro headwinds, right? There's a lot more room for downside in the traditional markets, and that fear alone could push a lot of people out into cash. So I don't know what the bottom is exactly, but for Bitcoin and Ethereum, I think we're damn close. I don't think we can go too much lower. And if we do start to go much lower, I think that there will become a key moment, an inflection point where it switches, it turns around, and it's very strongly up for quite a long time afterwards. But at this point, again, what's difficult are these macro headwinds. Like, this stuff is just awesome. This is such a powerful event. I don't know what type of storyline we're in right now, but protest. What's the difference between a protest and a revolution? Like, when this happened, they're like, yeah, he resigned. Like, this is the video of the live footage of the prime minister resigning. He may be chased out of his house by a mob of people that probably would have like dragged him through the streets if he had been caught. And this is actually kind of commonplace in most of the world, but it's until you get those few people in front of you during those ash experiments that finally change their mind that the governments don't resign. So we're in very tumultuous times. And again, I suspect that Bitcoin will ultimately benefit from this, but it will be in just to the detriment of most society. This has always been one of the downside factors, is we know that they're going to destroy the currency and the most of the financial system here. So when we get our biggest ups, it's when most things will be down. We will be down at the same time, but there'll be a sharp moment of inflection when people realize that utility of something is so much more valuable than just the paper dollar. Like, what can you do with a paper dollar? Burn it? Wipe your ass with it? Not a whole lot. And that's what these people in Sri Lanka here realize. You can't do anything with that paper dollar, right? And that maybe was an aspiration of wealth for a long time, and it evaporated overnight. So that's a difficult one. To say exactly how much fear and how much momentum goes into and out of a market. We just try to aim at a range. We're like, this is in the range of the bottom. It's good enough. Because getting it right doesn't do us like the exact Pico bottom. We're not trying to trade 100x leverage here or something. It makes no sense, or any leverage. See a few more thoughts. Yes. Yeah. There's a lot of bad choices for government. We agree. We want you on YouTube more often. I'm back now. I'm back from my little vacation, so thank you. I will be back on YouTube more frequently. I love doing these chats. We got a bunch more podcasts lined up. We've got a podcast with Big Time, podcast with the Near Protocol founder, Ilya. I've got a few more great podcasts lined up, you guys. I love chatting with early stage founders. And we've got some new cool ideas coming up here in the future as well that hopefully we can all participate together on. So that's also an exciting kind of step forward. Let's see. Awesome. Oh, here it says, Settle Paddler says, I'm baffled by the bullishness with the greater macro issues, especially seeing what's going on to the cost of basic needs and inflation, making our wage scraps to afford those items. Seattle Paddler, the first thing I want to point out to you is that the cost of basic needs is not inflating that high because it's not available. It's inflating that high for a different reason. Now, this is where you might have to like put on a contrarian hat and start to wonder, wait, so if you push farmers out of farming because you want them to go green and now can no longer produce food, so therefore the food cost is going up. It's not that there's a lack of food because there's too many people and we can't afford to make food. It's because we're making stupid fucking decisions in politics, and therefore the downstream side effect is now people can't afford food. So it's not this. The problem isn't, oh, there's a basic inflation in the cost of food. No, there's actually what seems to be a directed attack against food to increase those prices, to then, oh, well, we need to solve this by increasing interest rates, which clearly interest rates are going to fucking do nothing for the inflationary cost of food, because those are coming from the fact that these dumb pieces of fucking retard are trying to grow food with no nitrogen because, hey, the climate change is like, okay, well, you're going to do one of two things. You're going to set the economy into such a deflationary death spiral that basically everyone dies, which is maybe what they want. Who knows? Or you're trying to force your own agenda by causing a particular set of problems, which we've seen tons of times before. Food is important. Fuel and energy are important. Like Germany all of a sudden going, hey guys, we're just going to not use Russian oil. It shows either one of two options. Either they're stupid or they're criminal. And every time you see them make the same decision falling in the same direction, well, it becomes more and more likely that what you're dealing with is actually criminal behavior. So the bullishness here on macro issues is that actually all things could be solved here relatively easily if we fixed the government. Right. So the reason we're bullish is because technology like this is supposed to take over in those moments of change and become the predominant leader. Right. Because we went from, hey, you got a telephone line, to pretty much nobody has a telephone line ever again. Right. Like I don't think any house I've been to has a telephone line in the last year or two, unless they're old homes. Right. So that's important to understand, because those things change very quickly. You go from one paradigm to the next because of the need for change, because the change that was there was just so much better than what they had. The reason food and fuel, well, fuel is a bit different. Fuel, we're still putting constraints on, but it is a limited resource. Like it's not an infinite amount of fuel. So there's a limited resource. It would go up, and especially if you attack Russia, who provides most of the fuel to these places. So the reason those costs are so high is not because of the cost of those things being high. It's because of stupid people in government. So let's just be very clear about that. We could actually do a much better job of this. So the bullishness comes from the problem is the government. The solution is likely this technology. That's why there's such bullishness in macro headwinds, to clarify. It's not about wage scraps. People should be getting way more. There's way more abundance for everybody available if you fucking get rid of these governments, pretty much. They're the worst return on investment ever. Like no one would ever buy their product. Like, Jesus, it's horrible. Okay, so let's see. Do one or two more thoughts here. With all the talk of an upcoming economic recession, to what degree do you think the value of real estate will be affected negatively? Well, that's a very difficult question to answer. Real estate, I think, for instance, the property I bought here has 150 plus fruit trees. It's got a private well, 20,000 liters of water storage. Productive property that makes avocados and lemons and mangosteens is valuable always, because people always need food. So productive real estate like farmland is going to be super valuable. Productive land that has water, it's going to be super valuable. We've even seen this around Colorado. People are buying up property because they get access to the springs because they need the fucking water. So water and food are ultimately valuable. Water, food, and energy are super undervalued. And I think I've made this assertion before. It's like the price and the value of a pineapple is out of whack. So there's that. Oh, I'm sorry. Leo Lady says, I lost Bitcoin on Celsius. I'm sorry to hear that. I always try to stay away from recommending a high or like a yield for risk like that. We like to risk on venture capital because we know we're likely to lose everything, right? So we're prepared to lose everything. We make investments in highly risky ideas that we're prepared to lose all the investment on, because if we don't lose all the money and we get it right, it's usually worth like 100 to 1,000 times more. So we'll risk all of it for the 100 to 1,000x, but we don't want to risk all of it for like 3%. That's always a bad idea. And that's what I was so blown away by Three Arrows Capital from. It was like, wait, hold on, you guys risked it all for a few percent? Like, that's just nonsensical. So I'm sorry, but I think you'll be able to recover. Small investments can do, and can even outperform all of that. Like you could have made $1,000 investment in Matic in 2019 that end up worth $200,000. So $1,000 can vastly outpace that, and that's why we like this high risk, high return venture instead of like risk with only moderate 3 to 12 or 20% returns. Like no, that's nowhere near enough. 100x, 1000x returns. Do you use Telegram? What's the one way to hear your uncensored thoughts? We have a private group, and we've been talking about maybe opening the front end of that private group so that there's like just a general group chat, so all of the Bear family can collaborate together. And we'll probably do that, but we're just going over it with the board. We don't want to make more work for ourselves at this point. I'm happy with my workload here. We don't want more work. I don't need it, but I love the community and showing up with you guys. So we'll probably have that free front end, and we'll probably do it in Discord. But we're just trying to figure out how we manage that, because we know there's a lot of spam and how do you... Anyways, we're just trying to figure out what's the best way to open a front end so there's very little spam as possible. So maybe you'd have to sign up for the newsletter so that we could verify your email and keep track of you or some shit like this. I don't know. But we're figuring it out. So yes, but not yet. I think that's a yes. Willie Welloff says to Leo Lady, jealous and missing the boat. Yeah, Celsius, I never invested in Celsius. I didn't really look at them. I just didn't like Alex Mashinsky. I never chatted with them. We didn't talk about their platform or them at all, ever. But wow, they were short. They were like short like $1 billion or something. That's an enormous hole. I don't even know how you do that. Like, that's just so crazy. Well, awesome. There's a bunch more stuff I wanted to go over today, but I'm just not. We're just going to show up every morning. We're going to do these 9 a.m. ish morning shows, and we're just going to do that every day so we can catch up, because there's a bunch of stuff. So thank you all for joining us today. Give us a thumbs up if you like this content. Really grateful to be back. Super excited. I tried the vlogs. It's difficult. It takes time. Here I just press go live, and it's super simple. I don't have to edit. So we'll just do more of these, and hopefully that fills in the gaps. So keep that in mind. We'll be back tomorrow. We'll be back tomorrow morning. There's a bunch of fun stuff to take a look at. And it's just kind of a day-by-day process. And I believe we're about to get a nice automatic rally too. So there'll be about like hype in the market for a week or two or whatever. With the 100 days we get of hype. And it'll be interesting to see too, because again, you have to remember that a lot of the negative news about the increase of the interest rates was supposed to bring Bitcoin lower, and it didn't this time. And in fact, all these assets went up a little bit. So we see that there's buying power regardless of loans. So everybody's flush with capital. This Theo with the Arcane Bear. Jesse Doe says, bruh, it's great to see you, Jesse. Jesse, we should collaborate more. I love your write-ups. Give me a shout sometime. We'll drop in. Thank you, Bear family. Appreciate you all. I've got an outro. Bam.